Hello, and welcome to another episode of LGOtv Big Talk. And why Big Talk? Because I hate small talk. Now, my guest today is really interesting human. I can't wait for you to meet her and learn about her because she is somebody who decided that she wanted to live life her own way. She's an entrepreneur. She wasn't one as she was growing up, but she's discovered it later. So I want to talk a little bit about how you discover that, and not just discover that you're an entrepreneur, but make it all the way to Shark Tank. So Kim Kaupe is a founder, keynote speaker, and one-of-a-kind teacher. From worldwide stages to her online courses, Kim's mission of investing in yourself, supercharging your career, and building your network has garnered the praise of corporate clients like American Express, YPO, TEDx, and LinkedIn. Her weekly live series, Coffee with Kim, brings in experts, founders, and leaders to share tips, tricks, and strategies to help them excel. Additionally, Kim is a partner in a fan engagement agency, Bright Ideas Only. It's kind of like big talk, right? You don't want bad ideas. You want bright ideas only. We only want big talk here. And at this agency, she works with A-list properties such as Paul McCartney, Oprah, the New York Mets, Shawn Mendes, small time, to create marketing programs, new revenue streams, and branding. You might recognize her from ABC's hit primetime show, Shark Tank. She's secured offers from 4 out of 5 sharks, from her role as a judge in the 2019 Miss USA pageant live on Fox, or from her various social media channels where she pushes out content daily. She's also been named to Inc.'s 35 Under 35, Advertising Ages 40 Under 40, and Forbes 30 Under 30. Kim, welcome to Big Talk. I am 50 over 50. How are you today?
It's like all the numbers all at once. You're just like, ah.
Exactly. But you know what? They're all earned. So I read in the bio, you have a more personal bio on your website. And I read that you said that there are 2 kinds of people. There's like the kids that are doing the hustle in the back of the school bus selling the candy, and there are kids that are buying the candy. And you were a candy buyer. You weren't the hustler. You weren't the entrepreneur. So when did you discover that you were an entrepreneur?
I honestly think it was more of like a happy accident. And I think so many of us get entrepreneurial when we get fed up. And that's when we want to find new ways to do things, new ways to find happiness really for ourselves. And for me, that happened in a work setting. I was at a job that I was not super happy with. And so this opportunity sort of arose to start this company. And it was like, I was 25 at the time. I think we all do things at 25 that maybe are not the most bright in the world. And so I was 25 and I thought, well, why the heck not? I didn't have kids. I didn't have a mortgage. I didn't have car payments. I didn't have any of this stuff. And so I thought, if ever there was a time to take a big risk and take a big leap, this was it.
It's funny that you say that because I started my first company when I had a baby 6 weeks earlier. We had just bought a brand new house and I had my first mortgage. And obviously I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And it was the same thing though, where I also had this moment of rage. There's a book by Margaret Heffernan called How She Does It. I think it's called How She Does It. And she talks about, she interviewed 60 different female entrepreneurs who had everything from like $60,000 in revenue to 600 million in revenue. And to a one, each one of them said, I had a moment of rage. And I remember listening to her about 5 years after I'd started my first company, hearing her talk about this. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. I had a moment of rage and I didn't even realize that it was happening at the time, but it was that same moment. So what were you fed up with that you needed to find this change?
Well, one, I think you were way more brave than me for having all of those things going on. I mean, I can't even imagine.
Braveness. I mean, I couldn't do what I was doing anymore. Like it was more like organ rejection more than anything else. Like, I don't know that it was bravery so much as just, I couldn't not do it.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a very different path, which is super interesting to hear you say that. Because for me, it was, I had worked in magazines. Really, I worked at Condé Nast in New York City, sort of like dream job in terms of like, that's always what I want to do. I worked there for 2.5 years and really just felt like I wanted a change. I wanted to try something new. And so I went over to this ad agency. Again, I was 24 years old. I didn't do a ton of research like you can now on Glassdoor or Monster.com. You can kind of see the vibe of where places to work. I didn't do any of that. And I very quickly got this job thinking I was going to be like Don Draper having whiskey at an ad agency at like 4 p.m. And when I got there, I was like, oh no, like I'm not Don Draper. Like this is not like the movies. I don't like this. Like the dynamics were not really great. I didn't love it. And so 10 days into this new job, I was like, I have made a mistake. Like I have made a big boo-boo, and there's no one to blame but myself. And I thought, well, I was sort of freaking out and complaining to the girl sitting next to me. And she's like, hold on, before you freak out, like, let's go to drinks. And she was the girl who worked with me at the ad agency. And she's like, this place sucks. And I was like, why didn't you tell me that sooner? She's like, this place is awful, but like, I have this idea for this company and I think you'd be a great co-founder. Meanwhile, I had known this woman for like 20 days, literally. Right. And I thought, well, I have two choices because I can't stay here because I've made a mistake and I realize that now. And so choice number one is to call my old boss at Condé Nast and sob and ask for my job back because I knew they hadn't filled the position. So that was option one. But I sort of had left like Jerry Maguire, like I'm out. And so like the thought of calling her back and being like, I'm so sorry, like that really wasn't something that I wanted to do.
That was a burned bridge, we like to say.
I was like, oh. And option two was saying, okay, I'll start this company with this girl. Statistically, it will fail because let's be honest, 92% of startups fail. So I'm like, statistically, this will fail. But for 3 months on my resume, I'll have, co-founder of a defunct company. And then when I go back to my old boss and grovel for my job back, I'll at least have some dignity of like, well, I was the co-founder and it didn't work. And so that was really, I had all these plans for failure. I had all these plans of like, well, statistically, when this fails, I can go back to the magazine industry. I can, go work at this other job. And what's funny is I never planned for success, which is the opposite of most entrepreneurs. Most entrepreneurs are like, I have a 6-month plan. I have our year-long plan. And when we hit our Q3 goals, then we're going to do this. None of that. Like, I was like, oh, if we make it to 6 months, like we'll be lucky, which I actually think that sort of, mentality ended up helping me because I didn't have expectations. So I was never disappointed. Everything was like icing on the cake. Everything was gravy. Everything was the cherry on top because I never expected us to get past 3 months. So anything after that was like this brilliant gift. So my attitude was always excitement, as opposed to, I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in that first year, like, it's a slog, man. Like you're really busting butt every single day, working like 60, 70-hour weeks. But I sort of approached it with such joy because I was like, oh my God, this is working. And I totally thought it was going to fail.
Right. But there's that moment where you're like, oh my God, it's working. Holy shit. This could be bigger than I thought it was going to be. And so I'm writing my next book right now. This is probably why our friend Mitch introduced us. I'm writing my next book right now, and it's going to be called Wonderhell. And it's about that moment where like the thing works. Somebody's buying your product. They're reading your book. They're listening to your podcast. They're hiring you. And you're like, wait, what? Like, oh my God, that's amazing. It's awesome. It's humbling. It's wonderful. And also, I've never been so exhausted and full of stress and anxiety in my entire life. It's kind of hell. It's wonderful and it's hell. It's Wonderhell. But Wonderhell is that moment where the burden of your potential walks in and goes, hey, Kim, what you got for me? Now that you've realized that this thing could be bigger, are you going to live into this newfound potential that you didn't even know or expect was there yesterday, but suddenly you feel? And then like, I think that burden is only as big as your ego. And it's in that moment where you realize what you're made of. So what did you do when you were like, okay, this is great. This is wonderful. But at some point the like, this is great. This is wonderful excitement ends. And you're like, we got a real thing here. We should do more.
Yeah, it was really digging in and saying, okay, what's next? What do we do? And actually, it's an interesting point, because I would say about 13 months into the business, we actually had to stop. And I've talked to a lot of founders, and we did not have a product-based business. We had a service-based business. But I know with product-based businesses, like the supply chain and kind of
Yeah.
gearing up, you kind of run into that same thing where I was like, we actually have to stop. And for about 60 days, we did not take on any new projects or any new clients, because the systems that we had to grow from 0 to 6 months, and even 6 months to 12 months, we realized by month 13, like, oh, these aren't working. Like
Yeah.
this is not scalable. We have to stop. We have to take a step back. We need a CRM. We need an office space. We need, we really had to step back and say, okay, we have to grow this. And it can't just be with like duct tape and sweat, which is what we've been doing. We were sort of like, okay, we need to really sit down like an architect and build a proper blueprint so that our house does not fall down.
Yeah, I remember the moment where I was doing my own invoices at 2 a.m. and my husband like walked into like our attic, which is where my office was, also service-based business. And he was like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm sending out invoices." He's like, "But you can't add a column of numbers." He's like, "You like that's not your it's not like." My mother used to joke around that you only have to be good in one room of the house. And he was like, "This isn't your room. Like, what are you doing?" And and it was true, because I would be sending out these invoices when I just had like 2 or 3 clients at a time. No big deal. When I had a dozen and there I had 4 staff members and suddenly I had to figure out whose hours were where, that got a lot harder. And I was looking down the barrel of like 12 clients at a time and 2 dozen staff members, and grow and grow and grow. And that 2 a.m. was going to become 4 a.m. And how do you do it? And also the invoices I was sending out like I said, they were wrong half the time. So I had to hire people. I had to like figure out like, how do you run a big girl company? It wasn't just like me hanging out. Like I interviewed Anne McFerrin, who's the founder of Glamnetic, on the show. And she was talking about like they were doing $1 million a month and she was still packing her own orders out of her bedroom. She was like, yeah, I had to figure out how to be a CEO.
And I think that that's a learning curve that nobody really talks about. I think a
No.
lot of the stuff is, how do you start and starting and, coming, but you never really talk about the, like, there's always a jump. And there continues to be
Yes.
jumps. I don't think any business has like a set it and forget it model. Every single business, whether you are the Honest Company or Spanx, has to figure out how we're going from 10 million to 20 million in revenue, and 20 million to 40, and 40 to 50. And every single one of those mile markers has a jump, has new supply chain issues, has material issues. And so I think that that's a really important conversation, because that's sort of that wonderful and confusion and oh crap moment. A lot of people think that happens once,
Oh, no,
and that actually
no.
happens like over and over and over again.
So that's actually why I'm writing this book, because everything I've read, like when I experienced my own Wonderhell, I started looking around and I was like, where are the books that are telling me how to figure this out and how to grow and how to learn and how to thrive in it? Everything I found was about how to survive in it. Like put your shoulder to the wheel, hustle harder, lean in, and or like self-care, bubble baths, go on a retreat, do yoga, namaste, breathing to your liver energy, like whatever, like what is that even? I don't even know. But there was nothing that talked about how to thrive in these moments, because I think on the other side of this wonder hell is the next wonder hell and the next wonder hell and the next wonder hell, if you're lucky, right? Like, like why do we think success is a finite destination when really it's a portal, right? It's a portal that shows you what you are. So in those moments, did you feel like growth was the only, like you just wanted to keep growing and growing and growing, or was there a part of you that was like, this is a good place to be, let's stay here for a little bit and figure out, because you're also in a moment of time in your life where work, you can dedicate yourself fully to work, but work may not be the only thing going on.
Yeah, I would say we got about 4 years into the business, and it was 16 employees, and you're working in Manhattan, and we had not raised any venture funding. So everyone's like, you got to raise a round, you got to, pour gasoline on the fire. And I think so much of the startup space, whether you're in SF or whether you are in Manhattan or whether you're in LA, is more.
Yes.
It's this attitude of more is better, more is better. You know, you hit 1 million in revenue, you want 2 million, you want 2 million, you want 3 million. And I was working like crazy, and we're getting all of these amazing clients, like some of which you've named, you know, Taylor Swift, Justin Bieber, Selena Gomez, people that I had like only dreamed about ever working with. And so you're getting this sort of conditioning of more, 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 and more, more, more. And I'll never forget it. I went home for the holidays. I grew up in Florida. I went home to Florida for the holidays, and I was sitting on the beach by myself. This is like January 1. And I sort of had this epiphany, this, you know, aha moment, as Oprah would say. And it just sort of hit me. And I was like, I'm not happy. And that was a real sort of scary feeling. I have to be honest with you, because so much of society was telling me, you're doing great, you're happy, you know, you have 16 people now, you have more and more. And I was like, I'm not happy. And I know to everybody else, this looks happy, but like, I'm not happy. I'm stressed. I'm anxious. I haven't seen my friends. I haven't been on a date. Like it looked good from the outside, but from the inside, it didn't feel good. And I just knew I flew back to New York. I sat my co-founder down and I said, I can't do this, the path we're on. It's not going to work. I can't keep building. I don't enjoy it. It's not healthy for me. I'm losing sleep. I don't like it. And that's when I realized, for me, everybody's different. I have friends who, you know, co-founded Warby Parker, and they have 200 people under them, and, you know, that works for them. For me, I like small. I want less than 10 people working with me. I don't do well in I'm not the CEO that's going to have a 400 person public company. That's just not my personality. And so I think realizing that was a real turning point, because I just knew I'm not going to go on the path that society wants me to go down. And sort of going against that was really, I had people telling me I was crazy. I had friends that told me I was so dumb. I was so stupid. What was I doing? It was tough, but I really kind of stuck true to my roots. And I was like, we only get one life. And like, not to be pessimistic, or especially now with COVID, but like, you never know when tomorrow's your last day. You never know when you're not going to wake up tomorrow. And I'm not going to keep living this life that makes me unhappy because it makes everybody else happy.
Well, you're speaking my language. My first book, Limitless, literally was about what do you do when success doesn't equal happiness. So I can tell you that I spent, and I know I'm going to be on your show, Coffee with Kim, and we'll talk all about it. But I spent 20 years interviewing people who had incredible, like bold-faced headline success. And as a headhunter, I would call them to try to recruit them away to work for my clients, and they'd all call me back, because despite all that success, they weren't very happy. And I found that to be fascinating, because we're all given this scorecard and we're told, like, do this, do that, fill in all the check boxes, bigger, better, faster, more. And at the end of the day, that's not your scorecard, right? So like, how do you figure out what you like? So how did your co-founder react to that? Because I had that same conversation with a co-founder, with my business partner at some point, and it was a tough conversation.
Yeah, it was definitely a tough conversation, but I think for me, it was more, I have to stay true to myself. And it's sort of, when I was down in Florida, sort of sealed myself off. And sometimes this is going to sound so corny, but if I'm about to do something hard, have a hard conversation, talk about something that I know is going to be uncomfortable, sometimes I visualize, I know that sounds crazy, sometimes I visualize a little bubble around me. And I'm like, you have to like hold this bubble up, because I'm also naturally, and I talk about this a lot online, like I am a people pleaser. And it's something that I actively, like, I joke that I'm actively in recovery from, because my nature is, well, what makes you happy? Well, like, we can go where you want to go to eat. We can, and maybe that's something that's like a female thing as well. I don't know, but like, I'm always trying to like make sure everybody else is comfortable. What can I do for you? And so I sometimes will form this little bubble around myself when I know, okay, your tendency is going to be to people please. Mm-hmm. Your tendency when somebody starts to get upset is to just kind of like cave, like, okay, fine. Okay. We can do it your way. And so I really have to kind of like bolster myself up and say like, okay, you're not going to let this bubble burst. Like you are going to hang firm. And even though your tendency is to try to like shrink or let the bubble burst, like don't do it. Don't do it. And so I think that was like a tactic that I've used now that I still do all the time. And I definitely went into that conversation with like, hold this bubble up.
So was she shocked? Was she expecting it? Was she angry? Did she feel betrayed? Was it like, was she just fine? Like what was her reaction?
That's a good question. It's also hard to know like what's going on in someone's own mind. It wasn't like outwardly she like threw her glass down or like threw her phone against the wall. So I can't speak to what she was feeling like internally, but I think, I think at that point, she also, again, probably because of my nature, was like, oh, she'll change her mind. And a lot of people thought that, right? Like I can remember telling friends like, yeah, I know we have 16 people and like, you think I'm going to go to 25 by the end of the year, but like, I don't really feel like it. And I had a lot of people, and maybe you've experienced this in your life as well, when you're talking about a new book idea or you're talking about something that you're doing and they just kind of like pat you on the head and they're like, yeah, I'm like, okay. And so there was a lot of like, where I was like, oh, I don't think I want to grow. And it was like, okay, sure. You don't want to grow. And it was like, we'll talk next week. Like, and so people were almost, I don't want to say humoring me, but I think in their mind, they're like, oh, this is a phase, or, oh, this is just something she's going through. And like she'll get over it. And yeah, I never got over it. I still don't want a 25 person company. I still don't want like something really big. So although I have found really interesting configurations. I've seen founders who they only work with a really small group. This is actually something that I saw when I worked with Oprah year before last, is Oprah only works with like a small group of people. But obviously those people disseminate out into like a much larger sort of force. But I would say she probably only interacts with like maybe 15 to 20 people. And that's always shocking to people because they're like, but she has the magazine and she has the TV show and the Netflix and the whatever. And no, like she literally, it's like those 15 people and that is it.
Right. I mean, that's the way to do it, right? You have somebody who manages all that stuff and then they report to you. Done. Problem solved.
And what's amazing about her is that also when she does new things, like I'm going to do this deal with Netflix or I'm going to do with those people move.
Yes.
So like her one person that maybe worked on the Oprah show, which obviously is no longer running, that person now goes to Netflix, or that person now goes to, the OWN network, or that person. So it's amazing because she's kept this tight knit circle for decades, but those people have maybe done 5, 6, 7 different jobs.
Yes.
It's a fascinating like story.
Yeah, I mean, my background's in politics, and we see that a lot with career politicians, where somebody goes from, their local city council to the House, to the Senate, to the White House, to whatever, and you bring people along with you, and they do different jobs in different places. But there is something to be said for finding your people, finding, and demanding loyalty, but also earning loyalty, right? Treating them so well that they want to stay with you and that you engage them. I think, Robin Roberts does the same thing. She sort of brings people from Good Morning America to Rock and Robin Productions and sort of all along. And it's amazing to watch. I think you can really tell a good leader by whether or not they bring people along with them because for me, I don't know that it's about skill set necessarily, right? It's about hunger, weight, tenacity, grit, speed, all of these things. And then somebody can learn how to do the next job, right? You can learn anything. So I want to go back to a second to the sort of humoring and people thinking that you're going to change your mind, because I definitely got that. When I told my business partner, I was like, I need an exit plan. Like, this is it. I'm done. I'm like, I haven't learned anything new in the last 10 years. And I was all about innovation, changing the entire market, how the nonprofit sector was expecting to receive these services. And then after 10 years, we'd innovated and iterated and changed the market so much so that we had competition doing the work exactly how we were. So like, you figure it out, right? When you get competition. And I wanted to keep innovating, but our team had grown so large that they were like, "Ugh, can you just let us take the car out on the road and see how fast we can drive it? Like, we don't like enough with like the Homer mobile. Like you keep like adding new things to it." That wasn't interesting to me. And when I sat her down, I got the same thing like, "Oh, well, we'll find a little place for you. You can have like a skunk works operation over here, or we'll find like a little thing, or we can create a something." And I was like, "No, I think there's this moment where you make that decision that you're done and your mind is already on what the next thing's going to be, right? Like it's almost like you don't want to do this thing anymore because it's not working for you, because you so want to be doing something else, right?
Totally. And I think what's hard too is that, again, and I'm sure you felt it as well, is you do have this team and you do have these people that you care for, and you've worked with them and you care about their livelihoods and you care about
And for
what
a
they're
lot of them, you've
doing.
built their career, right? I mean, they've left the big firm to come to your crazy magical mystery tour, and you've given them this gift of this career, but they've also helped you build your business, and you turn to them and you're like, "I'm leaving." It's
I mean,
hard.
how did you manage that?
I remember we sat down after we'd finally, it took 5 years for me to exit. And 2 of those years were like negotiating with my business partner. Like it got very emotional. Like it got hard. I didn't expect it to, and it got hard. And when we sat the rest of the leadership team down, I remember one of them saying, "Wait, well, you can't leave." I was going to leave. Like, you can't, like, I was thinking about at the end of this year, my kid's graduating and I'll be an empty nester. I was thinking I would leave. So now, like, you can't leave. It's like, well, was I supposed to die in this chair? Like, I don't understand. So I thought it was really interesting that they were surprised. They were just surprised that I would ever consider, like, it never occurred to them that I would ever leave.
I'm curious, because you've gone through that experience and you sit down with a friend, maybe at lunch or to have a coffee or something. Do you ever play devil's advocate to like friends? Like, why do you stay?
Sure. As somebody who's also an executive coach, yeah, I can't help myself. I'm somebody who spent 20 years asking all sorts of personal questions as a recruiter. I'm a Jewish mother and I'm an executive coach. So I kind of can't stop myself from, because I sense this in you also, that you can look at somebody and in pretty short order see what makes them great and help pull that out of them, right? And bring it to the force that the world falls in love with it. And when I see somebody and I see something that they do that makes them great, but that they're not doing enough of, or they're sort of pushing to the side because they have to keep filling in someone else's scorecard. I do ask questions to sort of figure out if it's something that they know that they're not doing, they're intentionally not doing it, or maybe they are unintentional but also still not doing it, or maybe they just don't care. And if I sense that it's something that they want to be doing more of, I'm like, so talk to me. What's going on? Yeah. Do you find yourself doing that with people now that you've been on the other side?
Well, I feel like after this experience, what I try to do sometimes is when I'm talking to a friend or something, if my initial reaction is like, "Are you crazy? Of course you should take that promotion," or, whatever it is they just told me, I will actually stop myself and I'll say to them, "Well, what are you excited about when it comes to this promotion?" And
Yes.
their answer to that is always really fascinating, but it is hard because sometimes again, like, I'm very empathetic. Like, if someone's like, "I got a promotion," my immediate reaction is like, "Hooray," instead of like, "Well, what does that mean?" Like, let's stop for a second and say, like, is this even something you want to do? Or like, but obviously society is like, celebrate, like, promotion, yay,
Right.
without necessarily taking that beat, that 30-second, like, half beat of like, do I want this? Is this something that I want? Is this leading me to my greater goal or my greater purpose? So I've definitely, ever since going through that experience, it's definitely something that I'm like, okay, let me take like a 30-second half beat. And I would say anybody who's listening to this, it's interesting to, when somebody tells you good news or bad news, to take like that 30-second beat and really think like, how am I about to respond to this? Instead of just like the immediate, like, whatever kind of jumps out at you at first.
Yes.
It's sometimes really hard. It's a hard exercise, but it is one that I try to do as much as I can.
Yeah, I think it's a really smart question though. Like, what excites you about this? I had somebody a friend came over this weekend and he was telling me about a job offer he just got. And he actually said, I'm really excited about it because it's something I've never done before. I just don't know what it leads to. Like, I don't know what's next. And so we sat and we had a conversation about, well, it could lead to this, it could lead to that, it could lead to that. And as we were having that conversation, I started noticing he was getting really excited about what it could lead to. And I think that got him excited about the job, the promotion. It's like, the new job that he was being offered. But I think there is this societal pressure that there's only one unflinching myopic definition of like bigger, better, faster, more. That's it. Fastest path to the corner office is the only one that counts. That's the only definition of success. And I, I think sometimes small is better. It's more nimble. I mean, you can make more money as a smaller company than you can as a bigger company sometimes. And sometimes it's not about the money. Sometimes why you do the work is because you want to have flexibility. You want to stay smaller. You want to make enough money. It doesn't have to be the maximum amount of money. But also, I think that you can sometimes have almost like a skunkworks operation where you can try out new things. You can sort of figure it out. You can kind of fail quietly before you're on the bigger stage. I don't know. I sort of like flying under the radar a little bit like that.
Oh, absolutely. And I think what's really, important is whether you're sitting on a beach in Florida, like mid-meltdown, or, you're at home, is really taking out like a piece of paper and a pen and being like, what does happiness look like to me? Whatever that is. Maybe it's making your kids lunch. Maybe it's picking them up from school. Maybe it's never having kids. Maybe it's never getting married. I don't know. Like, whatever that is to you, whatever, when you have your Harry Potter magic wand and could like dream up your life, like whatever that looks like, and really putting it on a Post-it note, putting it on your computer, putting it somewhere you can see every day, and go after that. Because you are so right. You hit the nail on the head. All society is going to do is barrage you with bigger, faster, stronger, more all the time. And you need that little pink Post-it note, or you need that little reminder to be like, I know that everything is telling me more, but I have to stay true to this little Post-it note and say, that's actually what I want. And that might not align with bigger, better, faster, more, stronger. So whatever that Post-it note is, like, do that. I'm looking at my Post-it note right now.
What does your Post-it note say?
My Post-it note says, exercise every day, spend time with Fernando, my fiance, and call your parents. And really, those are things that every single day I'm like, I want to do those things. And I don't want to get so wrapped up in work and this that it's like, oh, it's been 5 days and I haven't talked to my parents. Oh, it's been 2 weeks and I haven't gone for a run. Oh, I realized that, we're living in the same house, but my fiance's kind of turned into my roommate because we don't spend any quality time together. And that is a slippery slope. And it happens a lot faster, I think, than most people realize.
Yeah, for sure. I always say my husband and I have one fight, and we have that fight about once a year, but it's the same fight. And it's generally the like, why are we roommates fight? It's the like, we need to go on a date night. We need to like, let's spend some time together. We need to like see each other, right? Not just like be around each other. And it's funny, we've been married almost 25 years, very happily married, but it's like the same fight because you do sort of fall into routine, right? You do fall into rut. And sometimes you have to say I was like, I don't just not want to be your roommate. I don't want to I don't want to even be your wife. I don't want to be your girlfriend. I want to be like I want you to treat me like you treat your side piece, right? Like I like you return that text quickly, right? Like that kind of thing. And that's the kind of joke you can only make when you're like in a, solid marriage of 25 years. But
totally.
But I think that's really important, right? I think it's really important to be able to do it, especially coming to the end of a pandemic where we've been like, it's been a lot about logistics and safety and all of that sort of stuff. I like that you had this realization on the beach in Florida. Our business was run by something that we call the St. Martin Memo, because I had this moment of rage looking back on it on a beach in St. Martin. And I like whipped out my laptop and wrote a screed that became the manifesto that like laid down what we were going to do and what we were going to stand for. And I think that there are those moments. And I think if you're in the bigger, better, faster, more race, you don't give yourself those moments to just sit, because you can't have an aha moment where you're like firing off invoices or you're trying to return 17 clients' calls. Like, you won't have those. Like, you need your brain to slow down and to alchemize all the feelings that you've had over the course of weeks or months or years before it like drops in and is like, ding, here's actually how you feel about this thing.
Oh, I'm going to tell you something crazy, which is I actually schedule time in my calendar, and on the calendar, it says be bored. And what I mean by that is we have grown so accustomed to, if we're standing in the Chipotle line, we have our phones out. If we have 2 seconds at a stop sign, we're checking the weather. If we are barraged by information, oh, let me look this up, Netflix, blah, 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 that it's like, I need you to go for a walk outside with no headphones, no music, no podcast, no learning. Like, set aside time to just like be bored. Just like sit around. And some people call that meditation. I've been terrible at meditation. I keep trying. It like doesn't catch on. Yeah. But it's like, I will schedule time to just like sit, because it's exactly what you said. The thoughts, the genius, the universal aha moments, they cannot get to you if this is blocking them, or if your TV is blocking them, or a magazine or a book or whatever. Like, you can think about it like a one-way street. And if there is a car on the one-way street, nothing else can drive down that street. So you need an empty street for things to get to you. And so I literally set aside time, and it's like, be bored. Like let the good things come to you, like be empty, basically.
And how long is that on your calendar every day?
It's like 30 minutes, and it's not even every day. It's like twice a week. And I usually like go for a walk, or I'll usually just sit in the backyard watching like the squirrels chase each other. But it's funny because what happens, and I'm sure it happens to a lot of people, and it happens to a lot of people in two places. It happens to them in the shower, because unless they've brought their phone into the shower with them to listen to a podcast, it's usually quiet. And it usually happens to them when they're laying down to go to bed at night. And if you've ever laid in bed and all of a sudden as you're laying there, you're like, oh, I got an idea, or like, oh, I know how to solve that problem, or oh, I know exactly what to respond to that email with. That's happening when you're going to bed because the street is empty. And if you let the street be empty during the week, during like the waking hours when you're supposed to like actually be thinking, then you can have all those moments. And as you're sitting there watching the squirrels, you can have a pen and paper and be like, oh, that's right, I should do that. Or to your point, like your manifesto, like your St. Martin manifesto, like when you're sitting there, all of a sudden that can come to you. But if you are always busy, it's only going to come when you're falling asleep or when you're in the shower.
Yeah, it's so true. People are always like, oh, I get my best ideas in the shower. I'm like, that's because it's the only place you get your ideas. You don't let yourself get your ideas anywhere else. It is really true. And yeah, I mean, maybe it is a form of meditation if you're like sitting there and staring at the squirrels, but whatever, who cares, right? It doesn't matter what it is. It's funny when I write, I describe my writing as like, I'm a very fast writer. I write in pretty final form, but I'm a very slow thinker. So I sort of describe it as like, it's like I'm walking around the house and I'm like looking in the living room window and I'm seeing what they're watching on TV, and I'm looking in the kitchen window and I'm seeing what they're eating for dinner, right? You look in, like you can see like the upholstery and the drapes and it's not, and I circle the house and I circle the house and I circle the house, looking into each and every room. And then suddenly I find the front door. And once I find the front door, it's like, boom, final draft. I'm like thing 1 and thing 2. I know where everything goes. I'm having the greatest time ever. But it's because it has to sort of percolate for a while. And I do think the door is usually like a hook or a story or like a phrase or a something. And all of a sudden it's like all the pieces fall into place. But I have to be staring at the squirrels. Like it always happens when I'm, driving and I don't have the radio on and I'm all by myself. Or it happens in those moments where the brain just relaxes and there's, as you said, there's no streets on the car, no cars on the street, and all of a sudden it's like, boom, there it is. It's like a gift.
Well, and I'm curious for you because obviously you've done so much and continue to do so much, but when you had like the second book idea? Do you ever get a sense of like almost pushing it away? Like, I don't have time for you right now. I have my plate full, like go away. Sure. Or or are you like, oh, a second book idea, yay.
No, I literally was on an airplane and I was flying back. I had just shared the stage with Malala. Okay. Like, that's crazy. And Robin Roberts, that's crazy. The MC hands the book to her. It's like, you need to read this book. And she does. And she like tweets it out to like 5 million people and then asks me to be on Good Morning America. It's the most crazy, ridiculous week of my life. I debuted at #2 on the Washington Post bestseller list and took a selfie with Malala within like 24 hours. And I was like, who is this person? So I was flying back from Seattle. I was the speech was in Vancouver. So I flew from Vancouver to Seattle, and then I was flying from Seattle to Boston on a red eye. And I never take a red eye because, as I mentioned, I'm 50 and I'm too old for that shit. And I was flying back because Saturday morning was my goddaughter's bat mitzvah, right? So it was like Malala Friday night, bat mitzvah Saturday morning. Couldn't miss either one of them. So I'm on the red eye, but there's engine trouble before we take off and they switch our aircraft. So suddenly my beautiful lay flat first class seat that I was like, I will only take the red eye if I'm, gets switched. So I'm now in a middle seat in coach. I have like a linebacker to the right, a linebacker to the left. They're snoring on me. And finally, in the middle of the flight, I just give up. And I open my laptop and I just type out this Facebook post. And it was something, and I wrote something like, it's 4:28 a.m. or maybe it's 1:28 a.m. or maybe it's 7:28 a.m. I have no idea where I am, but I'm 1,500 miles from where I was and 1,500 miles from where I'm going. And all I know is that the space I'm in right now, between the blur that was yesterday and the blur that will be tomorrow, is Wonderhell. And I just wrote about this feeling of like, it's amazing, it's wonderful, it's incredible, I can't believe it. And also, holy fucking shit, I actually realized I want more. Like, I was on the Today Show. I want to be Good Morning America. Like, somebody's got to talk to Oprah under the oak tree. Why not me? Like, I want it. They say if you name it, you can tame it. And I'm like, screw that. If you name it, you can claim it. Like, these are the things I want. And one of my friends who helped me name my last book, Limitless, said, that's your next book. And I was like, yeah, whatever. I trademarked the word, I bought the URL, and a year later, it was still rattling inside my head. Like, I couldn't get rid of it. And I think those are the ideas, the ones that you push away, but they keep revisiting you and they want something of you. And they're like, talk to me, this, you feel this more. And I just kept seeing it pop up in my life. So even though I kept trying to push it away, like, I got like 4 to 5 years of pushing Limitless I got to do. I think it grows inside of you. Sometimes you do the thing because you can't not do the thing.
Well, and I think that's almost the scariest part, yes. I think, for me, because I'm more like, maybe similar to you, things are rattling around and I'm kind of swatting them away like a fly at a summer picnic. I'm like, I am trying to eat my corn on the cob.
Exactly.
Get out of here.
Because there's so much goodness right now. Like, right.
I want to enjoy what's in front of me. Like, get out of here. And I joke with friends. I'm like, it's like the curse of caring and the curse of like ambition. And you can't stop it. It's like a curse. It's like the Mummy and like I'm Brendan Fraser and I'm trying to run from it. I'm Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark and the ball is following me and I'm running. And you can't escape it because eventually that book idea, like you're like, I just have to do this. I have to write the book.
Yes. Yes. I mean, this is the burden of potential, right? You're like, oh shit. I guess I can do it. Like, I feel this heavy on my shoulders, but that's why I think the burden that you feel is only in relation to your ego. So if you were like, whatever, I'm not that interested. I'm just going to do what I'm doing right now. But if you're somebody who has insatiable curiosity, if you're somebody who does have drive, if you want to figure out the puzzle, if you want to, like in the beginning of the quarantine, we bought a bunch of jigsaw puzzles. And we did the jigsaw puzzles and we were done. And we were like, okay, fine, done. So it was me and my 18-year-old. I guess he was 17 at the beginning of quarantine, is about to turn 19. So we did the puzzles and then we would like order another one. And so we were like, well, let's order 2 that are sort of similar, 2 map puzzles, and we'll mix them up and we'll do them together, but they have different backings. So, okay, we can figure it out. And then we're like, what if we got 2 that had the same backings? And then we did we just kept trying to make it harder because it's not interesting to do the same thing over and over and over. And if you're somebody who has the curse of ambition or the burden of potential that you're feeling, you can't run away. Like you can run away from the boulder, but you can't run away from yourself. Like Kim, you're trapped in there. Like that's your DNA. That's your chemistry.
100%. And I'm curious because my fiance and I always have discussions about this. Do you keep the puzzles that you buy?
Well, we keep them only because we're lazy, but we're never going to do them again. So we every once in a while we'll do like a big clean out of like toys and books, whatever, and we do give them away. Do you keep them?
We give them to friends.
Yeah.
Or
yeah,
we
need to have like a puzzle exchange.
I know. I feel like there should be puzzles at like the public library that you can just like take and give back, because we buy these puzzles and then I'm like, to your point, I'm like, we're never going to build this puzzle again. But I do know friends that build the same puzzles over and over again. So we are different. We are different. I know we're different puzzle makers.
I mean, I'm sure that I'll get a lot of hate from like the puzzle manufacturers of America or something, but we shouldn't actually ever need to make another puzzle. There should never, we don't need to manufacture another puzzle ever again. Like, there are probably enough puzzles already existing in the world for all of us to use, right? Like there's just no reason, except there's like the stray pieces that go like wherever the socks go in the dryer. So maybe that's it. Like maybe it's just like this part of this giant, puzzle conspiracy that there's just gnomes that come into your house and they deposit the boulder that's going to chase you and your ego, and they take away just one puzzle piece, usually an edge. They figure it out early.
I like that. It's not the tooth fairy. It's like the puzzle gnome.
Yeah, the puzzle gnome. Yeah. What a jerk. Yeah. Okay. So when you have this idea, then what do you do with them? Do you write them down and like revisit them later? Or do you like throw them out to the universe and talk to friends about them and see what sticks? Because I never, like, I posted that post and I literally would never have thought twice about it, except that that friend who's big in bookmarking is like, that's your next book. And another friend is like, oh, by the way, that URL is available right now. You should buy it. And they planted a seed that if they hadn't would never have grown. But just because they planted it, suddenly it was like, oh, okay, I'll just hold that there for now. But it was just growing even while I wasn't paying attention.
Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head. It's the same for me. It's usually when I'm talking about something or a post, to your point, that somebody else that I know, that I respect, that I like, grabs onto it. And usually when they grab onto it, they just sort of like shake it a little bit, and thus they shake me a little bit. And I'm sort of like, okay, like, okay, I have to do that. And it's one of those things that, especially if enough people are doing it, then I'm like, okay, yes. Now I have several people shaking me. And it was funny because I have my marketing agency, Bright Ideas Only. It's great. And then I started to help friends like on the side build up their business presence, their personal brand, really represent themselves in their career, not necessarily being like a beauty blogger on Instagram or a fashion influencer on YouTube, but really in the form of business. And as I started to do more and more of that, friends were like whispering to each other and, oh, Kim helped me, Kim can help you. And then when I had enough friends being like, this is a business.
This is the thing.
And I was like, no, it's not. No, it's not. Get out of my way. I'm trying to eat my corn on the cob. Get out of here, fly. And enough of them were like, we're really sorry, but you're going to have to like start a second business. And I was like, but I have one business.
I don't want to get bigger.
I don't want to get a second business. But, I really had to answer that call for exactly what you said when, the URL is open. This is open. You really, it's almost like, and not to get all woo woo, because I know some people are like, well, it's
no, we go like, woo here. I like woo.
There is something about like the stars aligning or like coincidences. Like what a coincidence that all these people are gravitating towards the same idea. All these people are telling you that it's something that you should follow. Like what a coincidence. It's like, I don't know, like the universe, like things are, the plates are shifting and things are happening, and you just sort of have to go with it, even if you're like, oh, but I already have one business, or you're like, I already have one book. I don't need a second book.
So
You're
here's
like, well,
the thing.
the second book is happening. We're doing the
Yeah.
second book. It's happening.
So here's what I learned. So I just finished writing the first chapter of Wonderhell. I've written the entire book, and I write the first chapter last. And I think there's this Rubicon moment, right? You cross the Rubicon, like you glimpsed what it could be. Like your friends say, like, this is a thing. Like my friends are texting me now at random times of day, and they're like, oh my God, I'm in Wonderhell right now. Like they're using my word back to me. Like it is with, there's probably like about a dozen people in my inner circle, and probably half of them at some point in the last year have just used that word just in random conversation with me, saying like, I get it. This is actually what I'm feeling right now. And so I was like, this is a thing. But what happens is once I started thinking this is a thing, I couldn't, like, once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. Like once you see that this could be a new business, you can't unsee it. And so then you start to notice it everywhere. And I did, well, I'll talk about that in a second. So the thing is, like, once you've crossed that Rubicon, you no longer are like, is this a thing? Is this not a thing? The only decision you have to make is, do I go for it? And here's what I think is what I think, that Wonderhell only visits people who are worthy of it. Wonderhell visits people who are engaged in, who are excited about it, and who have the ego, the drive to want more, whether that more is like more balance, more alignment, or bigger, better, faster, doesn't matter, like whatever their definition is. I think it only visits those people. And I think if you're one of those people who has that hunger, who has that interest, who has that desire, you already know what you're going to do when you're asking yourself that question. Should I do it? Should I not do it? Because you're already seeing it. And the only reason you're asking that question is because you're excited about the possibility of it. So I think once you've, like, it's a sneaky bastard, right? Like as soon as you see your potential, you can't unsee your potential. Like for 20 years, I'd interview internal candidates for jobs. And even if they got the job or not, like if they didn't get the job, we always treated them great. But if they didn't get the job, they always still left within a 6 months to a year, because once they saw themselves in the job, like they tried, they were wearing the clothes, they were answering the questions, they were in the meetings, they were solving the problems in the interview setting as if they were that person in the next rung up. They couldn't unsee themselves as that person. So I think once you see it, like once you've glimpsed that there is this other business there, I don't know. I mean, your friends, they mention it to you and they talk about it and they tell you need to do it, but you kind of already know you're going in that direction, even by the time they say it, right?
Totally. But it's one of those things that sometimes I try to like ignore it.
Yeah.
You're like, let's just ignore the 800-pound elephant in the room and pretend it's not there.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, check out the elephant. You're like, all right, like put a hat on it, bring it to the table. We're doing this.
So here's a question. So I interviewed Whitney Johnson about a month ago for this, and she wrote S Curve. She is what is, I have her book here somewhere, but it's all about disrupt yourself. It's called Disrupt Yourself. And it's all about the S curves that we go on and how we have to have this beginner mindset. So like when you start something, you have no idea what the hell you're doing. And then you kind of hit the sweet spot. You're like, oh, I figured it out. I'm getting it. It's going really well. And then you kind of go to the top of the S and you're like, all right, I got this. I could do this in my sleep. It's kind of boring, whatever. And what she says is that in order to be successful, you have to keep disrupting yourself and jumping to another S curve and being at the bottom again. Because if you don't, when you're at the top and you're just kind of doing the thing you already know how to do, you actually start to self-sabotage. Like maybe you're not all in with that client and they notice it, so they don't engage with you or they don't hire you for the next contract or something. So when you're thinking about this other S curve you want to jump to, how are you staying engaged in the current S curve that you're on?
I think for me, it's about really finding balance and saying like, I love key lime pie. I'm from Florida. I love me some key lime pie.
I grew up in Miami, by the way. So
I
know key lime pie. Yep.
You know the love of a good key lime pie. And when I think about it, it's like, okay, I can't go to dinner and eat an entire key lime pie. Why? Because even though it's great, it's going to make me sick. Like it's just not good overall. So it's like, I need to have
but you shouldn't.
You can, but you shouldn't. It's like, I'm going to have a salad and the key lime pie. Yeah. So whenever I think about like the bright, shiny toy or maybe a new idea or an S curve that I'm kind of thinking about, it's like, okay, I need to have the salad and the key lime pie. Like I need to continue to honor what I'm doing the clients I might have or the project that I'm currently working on, and also eat the key lime pie. So I try to think about it like, I always tell people that I do this really funny thing with books when I'm reading different books or Audible. It's like broccoli candy, and I'll read like one business book. So I'll read Whitney's Disrupt Yourself, and then I'll read, Ruth Ware's thriller novel. And then I'll read Simon Sinek's Start With Why. And then I'll read, The Last Thing He Told Me. So, because for me, it's about how do I don't believe in cutting everything out. I don't believe in like, well, we're doing the keto diet, or it's more of like, how do I get a little bit of everything? I'm like the buffet of life. I'm like, how do I just pick, I just want a little bit like tapas style. I just want like a little bit of everything. And so that's really how I try to think about it, is like, you can't necessarily go all in on one thing, but I also really take a lot of inspiration. I don't have kids yet, but obviously you do, and maybe you can relate to this. I take a lot of inspiration from children in that, kids don't start crawling and, to your point, stop there. They want to learn to walk. They don't get on a tricycle, learn how to ride a tricycle and stop there. No, they want the big boy bike with no other wheels on it. And I think we can learn a lot from kids, because kids are constantly doing the hard thing. I mean, kids are always learning how to do something that's harder than what they currently know how to do. And I think sometimes that as adults, we like forget that.
Oh yeah.
And we don't have that same mentality of like, let me go try something hard today. Whereas that 2-year-old that's trying to walk, or that 3-year-old that's trying to run, or that 6-year-old that's trying to ride without tricycles, like they're constantly doing things that are hard for them because they want to like get to that next stage. And I think we can still do that as adults, but we have to choose to do it.
Yes. I think we think as adults that failure is finale. It's definitional. It's who we are. Like, you fail once and you're done. And kids know that failure is not finale. It's fulcrum, right? It's where they learn and they grow and they iterate and they innovate and they change. And I think that we get so afraid to fail because we think everybody's watching. It turns out nobody's actually paying any attention to us, unless you're one of like a handful of people in the universe. They're all busy paying attention to themselves. They don't actually care what you're doing. But it is an interesting place to be, because I think, we talked in the very beginning that, you took this big job, you thought that was the thing, and then you didn't want it. And I think that there are so many ages and stages in your life, right? So like, there may be a place and maybe a time where you want to do the bigger, better, faster, more. And there may be a place where you want to do the smaller, worse, slower, less. Like, figure out what I said before. But there may be times when you want to do that may, like, they're on ramps and off ramps, right? Like, if you have children, if you don't have children, if your spouse is retiring, do you want to be going hard at the same time, right? Like, where are you in your life? How do you figure that out? There are times, I live in Boston right now. There was a time in my life where I could have lived in Manhattan. I would have been in my 20s. I would have been poor as dirt. I would have been happy living with, 12 people in a roach infested, apartment on the Lower East Side. Now, no way would I do that. So I'm like, I don't have quite enough money to go live in the kind of style I want to live in New York City, but I also can't go back to, like, that's not a phase of life that I'm in right now. Will I get there one day again? Maybe, who knows, right? But like, we all have different ages and different phases. And I think being able to constantly, that's been one of the things that you've done in your career, is that you've reinvented over and over, depending on where you were and what served you and made you happy at the time.
Yeah. And I would say, it's still, like, if I'm being totally transparent, like, it's still kind of scary. Like, I do want kids. That is something that I want. So I look at people like you or other successful women where I'm like, how did they do that? How do you navigate as someone who, does get these new ideas or does get this ambition? And you're also, I think I've lived for 35 years being in charge of myself, which is awesome. But I also know, like, I can eat macaroni and cheese tonight out of the box, and like not really think about it. And when you have to like take care of another human being, that's a bit of a responsibility of like, okay, I can't just stay up working till 2 a.m. eating Pop-Tarts when there's another human that I have to like feed, keep alive, bathe, etc. So it is something that I think when I'm looking at the dips or when I'm looking at the next season, I'm like, excited, but also like kind of scared and like anxious, like, ooh, like this is a new phase. Like I've never like done this before. This is going to be kind of scary, but I mean, I know it's possible. And obviously you're a shining example of that. And, you know, your career never slowed down and you kept going and you kept climbing the mountain, but it's just like, it's a little, I feel like I'm at the precipice looking up going like, oh, I'm going to go up there, but it's going to be a little scary.
Sally Krawcheck, who's the founder of Elevest, who has, you know, $1 billion under management, told me, she's like, I just decided I was going to be average as a parent. She's like, I could excel in my career. I can do all the big things. I was just going to be average as a parent. And that was going to be just fine. And I was like, that is so great. Because it turns out you can eat Pop-Tarts at 2 a.m. and still take care of another human. Because honestly, they kind of come out of the womb like 90% who they are. And you got like 5% on either end. You can screw them up. But like they don't need you to be perfect. They just need you to be present. That's really it. And if they eat macaroni and cheese from a box one night, they're going to be just fine.
I love that. I love that phrase so much. They don't need you to be perfect. They just need you to be present.
Yes.
Oh,
yes. There you go.
So
That's my parenting advice. I don't know. I think I have 2 kids. One is they're about to be 19 and 17. The oldest is, you know, dirty, sweaty, heterosexual, heteronormative, you know, hairy, giant beard. He's going to Rice in the fall on an Air Force ROTC scholarship because he wants to study mechanical engineering, aeronautical engineering, astronautical engineering, and fly in fighter jets and then fly in space. Okay. My younger son is gay. He is into theater. He's into hospitality. We are RuPaul Drag Race super stans. I mean, they are literally 2 years apart. We had them at exactly the same phase of our life. We didn't have money with one, not money with the other. Like we were the same. We raised them basically at like the older one was always a little immature. The younger one was always hyper mature. So we kind of raised them as twins, you know, like they're clearly very different people. Nature versus nurture could come in my house and it would be a knockout, drag out, like it's done. Like, just look, like clearly they come out of the womb who they are. So, you know, your only job is to get on their bus or get run over by their bus. You don't really get a choice of the bus, what color they're painting it, where they're going, what's on the radio. Every once in a while, they might ask you for directions, but pretty much, yeah, I wouldn't worry so much about it. It's parenting is a lot easier than entrepreneurship. That I will tell you. If you could ride this wild ride, you can ride that wild ride.
It's like a startup.
It is like a startup. Exactly. There was a point when we had our eldest, we had a Dalmatian who was like 10 years old. And at one point I looked at the Dalmatian and I looked at the 2-year-old and I was like, the Dalmatian has the brain of a 2-year-old child. My 2-year-old is going to become a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old. The dog is going to stay 2 forever. So kids are much easier than we think they're going to be. Honestly, they don't know. They don't know what's normal, what's not normal. They don't know that eating Pop-Tarts once in a while, like breakfast for dinner, awesome. They don't know.
Awesome.
They only know what you say is bad. So like, tell them it's awesome and they think it's awesome. Yeah. Anyway, we could have a whole podcast about this. So, okay, where can people find you if they want to know more?
I spend probably way too much time on LinkedIn and Instagram. So you can find me there. Super easy hack to find me on Instagram. You just start typing out Kim Kardashian, Kimka, and I'm the Kim K with her clothes on. So right under Kim Kardashian, you'll find me fully clothed. So you can't miss.
That is hilarious.
Right there.
That is a great line. I love it.
I spend a lot of time there. And then on LinkedIn, it's Kim Kaupe, Kaupe.
Thank you so much, Kim. I could talk to you all day, but we try to keep these to an hour and we're already gone over. You were fantastic. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Yes, thank you so much. This was awesome.